For those of you who are joining us a little bit late, my name is Anderson Cook. I'm the coordinator at the South Carolina Center for the Book, known as ReadSC, and this is a partnership with Richland Library. And we are joined by Raegan Teller, a South Carolina mystery author. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure being here.
So I had a couple questions for you that I just want to talk to you about.
Yes.
How did you first get into writing?
Well, as I said, I was a business writer for 20-something years. I've always, been a writer of some sort. My love of reading started when I was very young. I started reading Nancy Drew, Trixie Belden, went on to Phyllis Whitney, Daphne du Maurier, Agatha Christie. I've always read mysteries. So when you read a lot, it's a natural progression to say, okay, I think I can be a writer. But as I said, I always assumed that I would be, even though I love reading mysteries because of my business background, I always thought that I would be a business writer. So even as a consultant, a big part of what I did was to do writing for clients because I was a management consultant. So I would write speeches for them or papers for them or talking points or whatever. So writing has always been a part of me. I just sort of tripped and stumbled into fiction.
Well, and you mentioned Nancy Drew as one
Yes.
that you kind of draw some inspiration from or were inspired by. What are some other authors that inspire you, whether it's contemporary or
Wow. I love John Grisham's later stuff. I mean, his first stuff was entertaining, but it was a little bit unrealistic, some of the plots, even though I like to read it. But some of his later works I really enjoy because they're about ordinary people caught up in extraordinary situations. Harlan Coben is one of my favorite authors, and because that's what I write about. I do read like Dan Brown occasionally where, all these things take place across continents and all, and they're kind of exciting to read. But what I'm really interested in, I'm much more excited if you find out that the person next door might be a serial killer. The person who teaches kindergarten is an axe murderer or something like that. I mean, it's not that I love violence. I actually hate violence. But I just think that the intrigue of finding out the other side of people and then having ordinary people. I don't write police procedurals. My protagonists are not now, and I venture to say they probably won't ever be actual police detectives. I respect and admire them, but that's their job. In my books, the protagonist is a small-town newspaper reporter. It's not her job to go out and solve mysteries, but she gets emotionally involved in these stories, and then she just has to find an answer. And so that's what intrigues me. Am I answering your question? I actually forgot the question. I was so caught up in telling my story.
That's understandable. We like to get wrapped up in our own stories, and that's a good thing. So we talked about this before your talk, but can you tell us a little bit about how you find the endings for your stories?
As I said, I start out at a big picture level, and I kind of envision what Act 1 is generally going to be about, what Act 2 will generally be about, and Act 3, which is the ending, will kind of be about. And with all three of my books, and even in the fourth one that I'm writing now, I think I know how the story is going to end. Well, the weirdest thing happened, the first time it happened to me was when I was writing Murder in Madden. I knew, I'm a new writer, I knew then, I knew how that book was going to end, and I was headed down that path, and that's exactly how I was going to end that book. Well, when I got to the end of the book, my main character, Enid Blackwell, decided something else was going to happen. And at first, I thought I was losing my mind because I was trying to force my ending, and it just wouldn't work. I actually was writing what she wanted me to write. And that happens, when you get so intertwined with your character, sometimes that your characters kind of take over. And I can remember sitting in that chair just saying, no. And she was going like, yeah, that's what happened. That's the story. You have to write. I'm like, no. So it was weird the first time it happened. Second time it happened, I learned that, I just kind of loosely decide what the ending's going to be, but I'm flexible enough that when I get to that point, the characters are going to tell me what happened. One of the best things I learned about writing from Al Watt, my writing coach, was that, to let go, when we're talking about let go of your idea. Know when to let go of your idea of the book. You might have an idea, but as you develop your characters, and he thinks there's no such thing as getting stuck in plot. You get stuck with characters. So if you don't know where your plot's going, go back and study your characters more. I have a series of 20 questions that I can ask my character. So when I get stuck on a character and I don't know what that character's going to do, I literally ask them a question and then I write as that character. And they're questions like, who was your childhood hero? What do you fear most in life? What keeps you awake at night? Questions that you would ask anybody in a regular coaching situation. And if you ask, say 5 or 10 of those questions and you write 5 minutes nonstop answering those questions, you'll get to know that character. So when you know your characters that intimately, then you know where the plot's going to go because you know how they're going to react. The only one you don't know, if you're introducing a killer that you haven't already introduced, then you might not know exactly what the killer's going to do. But generally, in my situation, the killer is introduced somewhere in the book. I don't just plop a killer in, and so far my readers tell me they haven't figured out most of them. So,
so that kind of leads into my next question.
Yes.
In a way. Is the Enid character? Do you feel like she was based on you?
I get that question all the time because I don't tell you a lot about her other than, she's in her early 30s and which I'm obviously not, and she has red hair, which I do, and she's hard-headed, which unfortunately my husband can attest that I'm hard-headed too. But other than that, no, we don't have anything in common. As I said earlier, I always wanted to be a newspaper reporter. So I knew I would have a protagonist that was a newspaper reporter. And now with the media in the news all the time, whichever way you feel about it, it's in the news. And so I just think, that what a perfect character to have, somebody who goes out and investigates and brings things forward, but I don't have nearly, there were times in the book that I'm like, well, if this was me, I would never pursue this. She's fearless. I'm not fearless.
So can you talk a little bit about what it was about crime fiction or what it is about crime fiction that really draws you to that genre as opposed to any other?
I'm going to give you the shortest answer I've given so far. It's problem solving.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, I hate violence. It's not that I love seeing people get killed, but I love the piecing together the little bit of clues and all the little tidbits of things and coming to an answer. And I love bringing closure. As I said, my husband's cousin in real life, there's no closure for the family. Well, I do have closure in my books, and in the second one where it was, inspired by a young lady who disappeared. In real life, there's no closure for that family, but I do have closure. So that's part of the satisfaction that I get is bringing closure.
Could you tell us a little bit about the role that libraries have played in your life, if any?
Oh yes, absolutely. I grew up in Columbia and I lived on a bus line, and that was before you wouldn't dare let a 10 or 12-year-old girl get on the bus by herself now, but I did it all the time then. I came to the library, which was over on Sumter Street, I guess it was. So I was always spending time in the library. And you could get, I don't know what the limit is now because I don't check out the limit now, but then it was 10 books. And so I'd check out my 10 books. And I had a friend who was, her parents were very religious and there were so many things they wouldn't let her do. But one thing she could do was read. And so we would come to the library, get our little bag of 10 books, and we'd sit under the tree in the summer and just read away. And that's really, I attribute having Pat as my friend as me becoming a writer, because if I had not been such a reader, I wouldn't have become a writer. And even now, my husband and I, we live in Northeast Columbia, which is a great place, but we've talked about, when we make our next move, we'll probably move downtown just to be close to the library. Literally just to be here because there's so much going on. I fuss at Sarah all the time though because there's so much going on, I can't find stuff, But that's a good thing to fuss about, There's just so many events here, and this library is award-winning. I guess you all know that. I'm just very proud of this library, and it's the library system's a huge part of mine. I just want to put my book in the book club, so y'all harass them, okay?
On the note of books, can you tell us what is the last book that you read?
I just read The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. It was marketed as a kind of a modern version of Turn of the Screw by Henry James, which is an old ghost story that I absolutely loved. It was so scary. I don't know that it quite lived up to that billing, but it's interesting.
And last question,
Yes.
what are you working on right now?
Book number 4. Don't have a title yet. Working title is Breach of Trust, but that might change 10 times before it actually is published. I'm about at 50,000 words out of 75 to 80,000, so getting there.
Very close.
Yes.
All right, well, that is all I have for you
All right.
today.
Well, thank you, Anderson.
Thank you so much.
And
for
thank you,
joining us.
Sarah.
Yes,
It's my
thank you,
pleasure.
Sarah, and thank you, Richland Library, for hosting us today. If you are interested in getting a book, and I certainly hope you are, Raegan does have some available for purchase today. And if you're interested in events similar to this, I know that Sarah says that there is a kiosk outside where you can scan your library card and get some recommendations on similar books and similar events that you can attend for the future. And that is all I have to say. Thank you so much for joining us.